The Teen Titans episode Go, not to be confused with the far inferior Teen Titans Go. Sorry, had to dig at it at least once in the video, obviously, with the title the way it is a fantastic episode. And just as much as I feel like the previous episode was necessary for levity leading into the finale, I definitely feel like we needed to get an episode like this before the show was over. And seeing how at this point, the crew working on this show would have known that this was probably the end, even if they were going to try to bait for another season, I would assume, with the very last episode of the series. It's good they put it here. I can understand why they put it here. And this episode is good in general, but it has what I feel is maybe the very best teaser in the entire show. Like, not a lot of kids' shows have teasers anyway. That being the brief hype you up segment that happens before the opening titles, for those who don't know what I'm talking about. But Teen Titans does, and they've always been pretty good at giving us some sense of what to expect from the episode. This one, though, man, it just makes you want to watch this episode so freaking hard. It opens with a group of amphibious-looking aliens talking up how dangerous the monster behind this seemingly impenetrable door is. Talking about what they're going to do. Like how screwed they'll be if the monster gets out. Only for the monster to get out and be Starfire. In cuffs. And, like, cool premise for an episode. Starfire got captured by aliens. But, no, something's off. She's wearing the more complete and intricate Tamaranian armor rather than her usual outfit. And that's because this is a flashback episode. This is how the team got together. This is Starfire before she met the others, breaking free of these aliens who've captured her, which alludes to her backstory in the show, which is, of course, an allusion to her backstory in the comics. And she, of course, escapes and lands on the nearest planet, which, of course, just happens to be Earth, and goes on a rampage trying to get the cuffs off by just smashing them into things. But considering that they're made to contain her, and she could punch holes through all of these things, it takes a lot of work to even start to make progress on them. But they are kind of nerfing her abilities, since this is obviously before she learned how to shoot starbolts out of her eyes, and they are blocking her hands, so until she at least gets the ends of them off, she can't use any of her energy projection abilities. She's just, phenomenally strong, and so when the other Titans come together to stop her, she does give them a run for their money. Which is where the first interesting twist of the episode comes in. The threat the Titans came together to face first was one of the Titans, which is such a cool idea. I don't know if this has any basis in the comics or anything. I don't think it does. Based on what I know about the various times that the Teen Titans have come together in the comics. But it might. I might just be overlooking something. But it's a really cool idea for this show. But prior to them coming together, we do get to see a little bit of how they are before they really settle into the team dynamic. We see Robin still off on his own doing Batman stuff. And he alludes to the fact that he doesn't work with Batman anymore. In fact, he works alone now. We see Raven just kind of hiding in the shadows watching people. We see Beast Boy having just moved on from the Doom Patrol. I don't remember why he moved on from the Doom Patrol. Did they ever say in the show why he left the Doom Patrol? I don't remember if they did. But we see him having just moved on from the Doom Patrol. Clearly not feeling like he wants to go back to them, but still very much the person that he was when he worked with them. Calling everybody sir, following instructions, being very proper. And Cyborg is wandering around, wearing a hoodie to hide his cybernetic parts, being just very understated and quiet. Like, at one point, after he's started to help out but hasn't really, come into his own as the cyborg we know yet, he says something. What was it? Oh, it was something about Robin. I can't say what it was yet because it's kind of a spoiler. I'm spoiling the whole episode anyway, so what does it matter? The point is, he makes a comment about Robin that the cyborg we know from later in the timeline would have said out loud in kind of joking way to poke fun at his friend, but here he says it real quietly under his breath, showing just how similar and yet different he was back then. And I absolutely loved, first of all, we get to see Robin and Starfire fight, which is not a thing that we get to see in the show practically anywhere else, right? And, man, as good as Robin is, at the very least this episode made it clear that she would win in a straight-up fight. Because while he gives her a run for her money here, she's like knocking over buildings and crap. So when she hits him in the face at one point and doesn't knock his head off of his shoulders, it's clear that she's going easy on him, but could have killed him right then and there if she had wanted to. In fact, this episode did a really good job of just keeping in mind what the limits of all these characters are and how their powers work and how they work together. So of course, it's Raven watching from the shadows who first realizes that this person who seems to be just destroying stuff willy-nilly is actually trying to free herself, so that she needs help. Because Raven is an empath, and while this version of Raven has other abilities above and beyond that, it makes sense that being someone who doesn't consider herself a hero, or a villain, obviously, either, she wouldn't have used those other powers, but she would know how to use her empathic abilities. So she interrupts the fight, she points out that Starfire needs help, and Robin helps her, freeing her from the cuffs. She's already gotten her hands out, but she's still not entirely free yet. So he shows that he's not an enemy by freeing her the rest of the way. And she runs off, and then the aliens that she's running from show up, and they demand her back, but Robin's smart enough to realize that something's up, so he's still going to go after her. And he goes after her, and the others go with him. And it's really cool. Like, Raven at first isn't going to go, but then Robin wants her to come, which fits so well with the kind of connection the two have with each other later, where it seems like these two get each other more than any of the others sometimes. Robin sees her potential for good, and you can see how big a deal it was to her to have someone affirm her in that way. It was very neat, a very neat detail. Just like it was a very neat detail that she hints already this early in their timeline that there is something phenomenally more dangerous about her. And it's worth mentioning. It's worth mentioning all these little character dynamic interactions here because of stuff like I mentioned in the previous review. Let's use that as an example. It even feels like the character relationships have come a long way since the beginning of the series. Just seeing them be chill with each other and be this found family with each other in the previous episode in what was a pretty chill story, they feel different than they did early on in the show. They have developed a lot. And so getting to see the starts of these dynamics here, knowing where they're going to go, they just fit so well. Like Cyborg getting fed up with Beast Boy being all like hanging on him and stuff, and being the excitable person that Beast Boy is, just, you know, in a different kind of way, because he's a different kind of person at this point, right? Cyborg, it shows that he's a cyborg to him, expecting to scare him away. Like, it's clear he has many other people before this. But Beast Boy, of course, coming from the Doom Patrol, isn't going to be scared by something like this. He's going to think it's cool. And I kind of imagine he's the first person to treat Cyborg like this since Cyborg became Cyborg, right? So obviously they're going to become fast friends. But Beast Boy is still kind of an annoying little shit. So of course they're still going to grate on each other sometimes. It's just very neat. I liked it a lot. There's even shipping stuff in this, shipping bait in this, when Starfire, to learn English, just plants one right on Robin's face. And like the screen even goes white. There's like little sparkles and stuff. I'm probably going to use this scene for the thumbnail of the video, actually, because it's pretty great. Which even constitutes a start of their dynamic, which is pretty freaking cool. And they have another brief confrontation with her, but it's only really because her planet is a fierce warrior culture kind of planet. She doesn't really understand why these people would be kind to her just to be kind. But once she gets it, she teams up with them and they fight the aliens. And it's not much of a fight. There's only really one of these guys, the big boss alien whose name I do not remember, who's really a threat to literally any of these characters. But they have a big-ass Death Star weapon, so the Titans, not the Titans yet, but the Titans have to go up to the ship to try to stop them. And they do fight the big boss alien, and we get to see them come into their own even a little bit more. We see Raven use her telekinetic abilities for the first time, or at least the first time since she met these people. Anyway, after she'd already used her abilities to teleport them onto the ship, which I imagine is something that she usually doesn't do with other people. We even see Cyborg reprogram a sonic analyzer into his sonic cannon to use against the big boss alien. In fact, this battle is just really good in general. This battle makes really good use and keeps really good mind of the Titans' various abilities and skill sets. Unlike in some fight scenes in the show where they all just seem like roughly equally powerful people rushing at the problem and slamming into it until it stops being a problem anymore, it really does feel like they're a team with different abilities supporting each other. And of course they win, and they end up on the island where the alien landing pod dropped, which is the island where Titan's Tower is going to be later. And the ship is even kind of in the shape of a T. The landing ship is even kind of in the shape of a T. It's just, there's so many nods to what's going to come later. Nods that would have worked as good setup. Like if this had been the first episode of the show, they would have worked as good setup to establish these things ahead of time. But I just feel like they work so much better as a flashback with us knowing all of those things going into it. In particular, I really love two things about the episode. First of all, I really love how all of these characters are in some way or another outcast. Star was taken away from her people to be a servant on another planet. That doesn't really make her an outcast, though. What makes her an outcast is that she understands things like kindness, where most Tamaranians just don't really. So already she's kind of suited to living on a planet like Earth more than she is a planet like her home planet. Robin has clearly just had some falling out with Batman. Beast Boy has moved on from the Doom Patrol and doesn't intend to go back. Cyborg feels like he's apart from society because of the way he looks, and Raven feels like she's apart from society because of what she is. And yet all of these people find each other, and they find a new family in a family of other outcasts. It's kind of cliche at this point, but it's still a trope that I just eat up. I also really love that up until the other Titans were so willing to fight for her when her father started to emerge, Raven really did seem to consider herself to be outcast, even in this group of outcasts, for lack of a better term. And yet, twice in this episode, she's the only reason the Titans become the Titans. First, when she stops them from continuing the fight with Starfire, and then later when they start to argue with each other, and she snaps, distracting them all from their arguments long enough for them to realize how foolish they were being and come back together. She also straight up calls them her friends. We see that before she learns just how annoying Beast Boy can be, she thought he was genuinely a funny person, and she saves his life at one point, which I guess that could also count as shipping stuff, too, shipping fodder, too, because people obviously ship the two of them as well a lot. It's all just very good. This is an excellent episode. Just spectacular, frankly. Now, the best aspects of it do rely very heavily on the continuity of the show, but the episode's still good on its own. These character dynamics are still really good on their own, and the action is superb. Some of the best in the show. This actually, I'm trying to remember, because I remember watching this one back when it was first airing. I don't know if I watched it new or in a rerun, though. But even back then, I really liked this one. I do think this is one of the strongest individual episodes of the show. Like, this one doesn't tie directly into anything else. I mean, it kind of ties directly into the whole show, but you get what I mean. It doesn't tie into any ongoing storylines. It's just a standalone episode that is enhanced if you understand the continuity of these characters, right? But I do think it's one of the strongest standalone episodes of the show, regardless of you having to know that continuity to get the most out of it. This is another one that, in the context of this arc, is fairly inconsequential, and yet you can't skip this one. It's really just that good. Though, at the same time, you really could watch this episode pretty much anywhere in the series and be fine, also. Because the stuff that is alluding back to stuff that happened prior to this in the show, it can work as hints for stuff to come if you do watch it earlier in the run. Which, incidentally, is what filler is supposed to be. A lot of people use filler in the anime sense, where it's stuff that can be lifted out of the show and not actually affect anything. And that's true of some filler. But Traditionally, the term filler in a show with continuity means an episode that can just slot in anywhere. It doesn't mean it doesn't have story or it doesn't impact stuff in the rest of the show. It's just that it's not important where you put it relative to other things. The impact is still just the same. And that's what this episode is. Which might also make it my favorite filler episode of the show, too. Honestly. As per usual, though, guys, I'd like to know, what do you think of the Teen Titans episode Go! Exclamation point. Not to be confused, again, with the TV show Teen Titans Go. If you have seen it, let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out the links to my various social medias as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description, but either way, this has been AJ22 and I will talk to you guys later.